All right, welcome to episode 3 of the Complete Solution Group. We have a great guest on today, Dale Lewis of Fortress Clothing. We met Dale last year at SHOT Show, and we're super impressed by his products. So, Fortress Clothing has been on Shark Tank. It was actually on episode 10, season 11. And the gear that they have is just awesome. I just got back from hunting, wore the gear hunting. I wore the under layer out there. It was, with wind chill, it was about -3. And I was sitting in a blind and I was warm. So, one of the nights I was in my cabin, which I still have not insulated yet. So, and I haven't put the wood stove in. So I was running on a small propane heater, got really cold in the middle of the night, decided to put that gear on, and I get back into my sleeping bag and I slept warm. So we're going to talk about the gear that Dell's got. It's great stuff, Fortress Clothing. It's got these 4 factors. It allows you to be wet and still keep you warm. It's easy to move in, which is one of the things that I love about it, because I love to be able to hike up into the mountains when I'm hunting. I need to be able to move. I don't want to feel all bulky, and this clothing does not do that. It moves very easy. It blocks the wind, and Colorado, where I am, it gets pretty windy up there at 12,000 feet up in some of the mountain passes. So it definitely does that, and it's compact, man. You can just put it in a backpack. You can place it somewhere. It's not this big amount of gear, and it fits you really well. So, we'll talk to Dale. We'll talk about this gear and really what it does, and we'll get going. So, John, what do you got to say?
Oh, so one, I just want to say, Dale, thanks again for joining us. And Sandra sends her love to you. She's busy right now and couldn't join us, but I know she was really upset when I put this together. So, Sandra, if you're listening, we promise we'll do a good job. But before we get started, I just want to tell you guys a little fact. Little did you know. So back in, I believe it was 1964, there was the show Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer that came out. I remember all of us seeing it. And, I was looking at it, and it's been playing now for 59 straight years, which is crazy. But the point that I think how it segues in this conversation is in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, there's a character, Yukon Cornelius. And Yukon is out there, helping Rudolph. And I think the elf's name is Hermie on his journey. And the one thing is, he is all geared up, and you never see him sweating or chilly. And I told Fab the reason why he's wearing Fortress Clothing. I said, I know that for a fact. So I actually have on my little Yukon Cornelius shirt here, and I'm wearing the Fortress vest, which, like, the one thing too, it keeps you warm. You're not hot, you're warm. And right now here in the Phoenix area, it's a little chilly, but having this on, you just stay warm no matter what. So on that note, I want to turn over to our guest, Dale Lewis.
Yeah. Good to be here, guys. So, as far as Fortress Clothing, as a way of introduction, we like to tell people, really, we're a technology company, and we manifest our technology through clothing. A lot of people, they're very familiar with the Thinsulate and Primaloft, and those are great brands. Unfortunately, their technology is pretty much from the 80s, and I know you wouldn't be using a nice big brick cell phone today, would you? You're going to use the latest technology, and that's really what Fortress does. Is we've brought a new technology. We have a patent on it, and we've pretty much identified the tactical market as one of our key markets, so that we can solve pain. And here's the pain that I think, and you guys correct me, I think the pain that most police officers, military folks endure is that they're fine as long as they're out and they're active. Typically, they'll layer up 3 to 6 layers, depending on the conditions. And once you're layered and you're aerobic, whether it's work or play, you start to perspire. And once you perspire, you're good as long as you keep going. But once you stop, that's when you freeze. And that's when you become ineffective. And by ineffective in the military, that's not allowed. You can't be ineffective. And by that, I mean, you can't take your eye off the objective because you're worried about personal survival or personal comfort, depending on the situation. And Fortress, kind of like Fab, you mentioned, our claim to fame is you can be warm and wet. And that sounds too good to be true, but let me give you just a little bit of the science behind that. The law of thermodynamics dictates that moisture moves away from heat. Simple principle. Now apply that to life. What that means is when you're outside, you are the furnace, and you're creating heat. And when you perspire, by law, the moisture moves away from you. our technology, our insulation retains body heat while simultaneously being hydrophobic, allowing the moisture to evacuate and evaporate. And it's crazy. I mean, you look at the videos. I think anybody who goes to our website, fortressclothing.com, you hit on the media tab, and there's some videos there that we created those videos. And I know, John, when you first came to our booth at SHOT Show, you were like, all right, how the heck are you doing this? How can you literally, I watch people jump it through 3 feet of frozen ice into a lake. They're soaking wet. They get out of the water, and in any other clothing, you would be dead within an hour. And not only are we not dead, but we're comfortable and warm within 45 to 60 seconds. And that's the beauty of technology. It's kind of like, you can use your cell phone and you can do so many things with it. Why? Because it's technology. Well, with Fortress and our technology, our patented insulation, you can literally be simultaneously warm and wet. And what that does for police departments and tactical, those individuals, the people that, if you're a police chief, you're responsible to preserve and protect not just the people, but your own employees. Those officers are now protected from the cold. They can do their job more efficiently. They can do it with fewer layers, and they actually enjoy being out. There's not that, oh, I hate being out in minus 20, because it's just like a nice spring day at 60 degrees. That's what it feels like. And you're shaking your heads because you've experienced it. And that's the hard thing, is unless you've experienced it, you kind of go back to your history, which is you've been disappointed by pretty much every other clothing company. I mean, think of the number of hunting lines where it's a 5-layer system. And so they say they're lightweight, warm, and breathable. Well, if you put 5 layers on, you're no longer lightweight. And the breathability, as soon as you sweat and you wet out, that's really not breathable. And to say you're warm, that's crazy. And we just have so many great stories of people who experience it. So anyway, that's us in a nutshell.
Yeah, I remember running into you guys at SHOT Show. John and I were walking along, and you were out just in the middle of the floor wearing the Fortress gear, just the underlayer shirt. And we were kind of looking at it, we're like, what is this stuff here? What is this guy saying? And, we watched your videos. We talked to you. John and I both bought, some of your gear. And I remember after leaving SHOT Show, we had a really rough winter here in Colorado last year. And, so, I was able to use the gear pretty much right away, got on my ATV, was clearing a lot of snow in my neighborhood, and just decided to go for a ride on my four-wheeler after that. So I'm hitting 20, 30 miles an hour on my four-wheeler. It's 10 degrees, and I'm not feeling cold. And that was pretty cool. That's when I knew that, hey man, this gear definitely works. I'm definitely going to use it for hunting. And again, I was able to use it this hunting season, was just super happy with it. And I was able, again, just put on that initial base layer, some light hunting gear on top of it. And that's big for me, not feeling so bulky, especially when I'm climbing through gullies and, going up and over rocks and stuff like that. I want to be maneuverable and not feel like I can't move. Wearing that gear and being able to wear some lighter clothing, definitely helped out with that, and being able to stay warm. I mean, when you're cold and miserable hunting, you're not having a good time. So, it's good to be out there, to have that gear on and know that I'm gonna stay warm.
You know what? You hit one thing there, I was going to mention is, we have customers already, police departments. We have the Air Force up in Alaska, and the response that comes back to us, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, but is especially like a police officer, by using our base layer. Now you're basically, in addition to, we reduce the total number of layers. And if you start with our base layer, you're putting the base layer on, you put basically, your uniform over that. And now you don't have that big coat on top. So access to your tools around your waist, nothing is prohibited. You don't have to have a custom coat that's designed to fit every need. Instead, we start bottom and work our way out. And by doing that, most of our clientele, unless you're, minus 40, you can survive and be comfortable and totally have the highest level of utility with just our base layer and a uniform over it. And that does it down to minus 10.
And Dale, on that, just years ago, about 20 years ago, I worked on the northern border, and during these winter months, we would be so bulked up. So I would have, I would have my pair of thermals, like, just all this extra gear. And I look like the Michelin tire man's like second cousin Eugene. And the thing that worried me the most was if I had to go make an arrest, I was so bulked up that it wouldn't happen. And that's the thing, that we're out there. It's windy, it's cold, and I'm there trying to patrol, and you don't want to get out of your car. If you do get out, you're running. So mentally, you're not even focused. And then fast forward to when we met you, my younger brother bought your gear, and he went out one night because he saw your video. He saw all that stuff. He goes, I'm going to go take the Fortress Clothing Pepsi Challenge. And he was out here in the desert. It was about 41 degrees, and all he was wearing was just boxers, a t-shirt, the base layer, and he just had on the combat shirt and his regular work pants, and he was laying out in the mountain, so it's obviously a little colder, 41 degrees, and he said, I didn't have gloves or the hat, and I was just there, and I was warm, and the guys with me were bulked up, and they were freezing. So from, the law enforcement perspective of doing surveillance or just, patrolling, there's so many pros out there. And the biggest thing that you said is when we're out there working, we're aerobic, we're sweating, we're hot. And that's the biggest problem, is now once you stop, now the misery sets in. And with Fortress Clothing, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and you hit another great point. And yeah, thanks for the lead in. Is just you're talking about your brother, just the flexibility, the lack of layers. I mean, you think about it, like when we first started, started in oil and gas, and those guys were wearing 6 layers and 24 pounds of clothes, and just the fatigue and the immobility. It's not even like you're the Michelin man. It's like you're the Michelin man times 2. You're just tired from all the weight, and you're not focused on the job at hand. And that, for military and or tactical, anybody there, that's life or death sometimes. Just not being aware of the circumstances and the surroundings.
Absolutely. Hey, explain a little bit about the Aries technology that goes into your insulation. I know you guys have trademarked that. It's kind of, what the technology is in your clothing.
Okay. So Aries Inside is a type of open cell polyurethane. It's a type of foam. And we are able to cut that foam in different thicknesses. So the Aries 500 is 1/2 inch thick. If you've got the 500, which it's the thickest that we go, you're going to have that if you have that on your bottoms and your top, you're literally going to be comfortable with 2, sometimes 3 layers, maybe, depending on your body type, your hydration, and your activity level. You're going to be comfortable to -40. We've actually had oil and gas workers wearing it at -68. That's the lowest we've ever found that we can document. So, and they were crazy. The oil guys were like, "This is crazy stuff. I mean, you should A, not be in those circumstances, but B, that's the kind of stuff you die in, and instead you're not even aware that it's that cold." So that's the Aries 500. Aries 250 is our more dominant product line. That's 1/4 inch thick, very lightweight. The nice thing about the technology, the open cell polyurethane, is by definition open cell. It means that it has the ability for moisture to make its way out. It seems unbelievable to be able to retain the body heat while letting the moisture out. But the nice thing about it is each of the fibers are hydrophobic, so they don't retain moisture molecules. Instead, it just allows the law of thermodynamics to push the moisture away from your body. So that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, the one thing too, just how flexible your equipment is there. I mean, that's what I like to call it. It's, again, when I was on the northern border, we would have to do maritime operations on the St. Lawrence River, and we would be required to wear what they call a Mustang suit. So you would have your uniform on, jump in the Mustang suit, put your boots in, so in case you went overboard, you would have that fighting chance. And I remember with the Coast Guard saying, hey, if you get in, this Mustang suit can only help you for 5 minutes. After that, you'll get hypothermic, and that's it. And St. Lawrence River is longer than a 5-minute swim. And just thinking now, like, what your equipment can do, your technology to help these officers with their safety is incredible. And that's one thing, I hope those folks that are listening, when you go to Google search, and that's something else I was going to bring up to Dale, is with Fab, Sandra, and I, we would go talk to different people to understand, like, how are they looking at new technology and innovation? How are they bringing that back to the military or to their police departments? And we talked to the federal government, here, the city government, and with the military, 2 different branches. And they all said the same thing, that they just have their officers or their soldiers just go into Google and typing in cold weather gear. And I did that yesterday. And when I pull up cold weather gear, it just shows like Patagonia, Columbia, North Face, and there was no Fortress. And I just want to let those folks out there knowing, before you go and purchase that, go Google Fortress clothing, look it up. They'll have some great videos out there. But the safety wise is something I think a lot of people fail to see. And the other big thing is, when we ask, like, do you guys have for the military, do you have an R&D? And they said, no, we don't. We just send people to the internet to go look for products. And I think that's something that with the federal government as well, with the state and local, same thing. There's no, when I asked about the SHOT Show, they said, we heard of it, but we never been there. So they don't know what new technology innovations out there. And that's something I think the people who are listening to this, whether you're in law enforcement or military, or just like Fab, you want to go hiking or camping, check out Fortress. I think their products, I don't think this, I know this, their products will make you safer, will make you happier, will keep you warmer. And that's something, when I was on the northern border, I wish, you were around 20 years ago, it would have been nice to know. And actually the anxiety, because when you're in a vessel out there in the water and that thing sinks, like, you're thinking, man, how am I going to make it, back to shore without, once I make it, problem solved. Now I have to deal with hypothermia, and up north, there's not much response time for anybody in the air to come save you. So I think your technology, your clothing can actually be that difference in actually saving officers' lives.
You bring up a couple of good points, if I can interject there. One is, so we already are having our product used by multiple police departments. We were introduced into the United States Air Force through a SEER specialist. So unfortunately, we've tried top down, and I don't have the connections, or I don't have the money to buy my way in. I don't know what you got to do, but the local guys, the guys who are in the cold, we've got a couple of those, and they've made some good inroads up actually in Alaska. So we've got some F-22 pilots using our base layer. We've got our mitten being used as the survival mitten. We've got some Green Beret in Utah who've been purchasing and using it. And it's just fun to hear the stories, from snipers saying, like, I went from 5 layers to now I'm 3, and I can be totally immobile for 24 hours. And to quote him, my testicles aren't the size of raisins. I'm just absolutely comfortable, and I'm able to focus on the job at hand. And then that brings up another point as far as cost. If you're looking at cost, you eliminate 3 layers, or you just eliminate 2 layers, that more than pays for just ours. And ours is not exorbitant. Our base layer MSRP, 129, 139, depending on which model, but you figure you can be basically shoulders to ankle for under 225 to 250. You're great. Also, another point, we do have the capacity and the ability to produce this all in America, so it can be very compliant. We do those on a per order basis. So that's, we'd like to cover that also.
Excellent. Yeah, and look, I mean, you go buy any other hunting gear, and jackets, bib, pants, whatever, you're paying $500-$600. I mean, for the bulky stuff that's supposed to keep you warm.
Yeah.
You get your base layer, and then you add another, medium layer on top of the base layer. And like I said, I was out there. It was, well into 10 degrees, wind blowing, and I was warm with just a medium hunting layer on top, and then your base layer underneath. And again, that's it. It says a lot to be able to move, to be able to not have so many bulky layers on. It just gets uncomfortable. But your gear definitely works. John and I have put it to the test. We get to meet a lot of people. We get to try out a lot of different gear, and both of us were definitely surprised about how well the Fortress gear worked for us.
It's fun. I love the T&E process, because a lot of guys are like, hey, we want to get some of this. We want to do 2-3 months. And we're like, really? Like, you guys can't be that slow. And I think what it is, they're just used to, we've got to try it in these different situations. We get people coming back after 2 days and they're like, this is crazy. Like, and especially if they get a cold day, then the testing period is shortened. It's just down to, buy this now because it actually works. And to not be that outer layer, or we do have outer layers. As a matter of fact, the Green Beret went with our shadow jacket just because it had our technology in the hood. So you could have from head down to ankle. And, and that's the other thing. We're very science oriented. If you keep your core warm, the blood's circulating to your extremities. At this last trade show in these last two trade shows in Minnesota and Wisconsin, I just returned from, people come up, the first thing they want to get is something for their hands. Oh, my hands and my feet are cold. And it's like, well, you got to realize, back to science, that's the canary in the mine. If your hands and feet are cold, that's the sign that your core is cold. So let's just work on your core, and then you're going to be warm. We deal a lot with Raynaud's disease, people who have a circulatory disease, and they're always, oh, my hands are cold. It's like, yeah. So let's get your brain to quit telling your body to keep all the blood in your core. And let's start by keeping your core warm. We discontinue that message to the brain. And now all of a sudden your hands are comfortable. Again, we like to be very science oriented, and that's why we consider ourselves a technology company.
Dale, the one thing I wanted to ask you, kind of switching gears, is,
sure.
Fab mentioned earlier how you were on Shark Tank, and to be honest, like I never watched that, but seeing you on there, I actually watched your episode, and I was just curious, like, what was it like? Because remember we had this conversation. You said you were there for like 8 hours. Like, what was going on? Like, when I hear this conversation between us, and just looking how like your technology can go expand this multi-universe of people. It's not just law enforcement or military. It's the construction workers. It's the oil rig workers. It's all these people. Like, what were they thinking on that show when they heard you talking? And I know it was almost like too good to be true. And then I was looking at the comments. I don't know if you saw them. There was a lot of comments, and they're saying, hey, how come you didn't mention or how come they didn't mention first responders or the military or in law enforcement? So it was interesting. I was wondering if you can just kind of share, like, when you got there, like, what was your day? And also too, like, what was Mark Cuban like? What was he, I think that those, if you can share some of that, would be great.
Oh, happy to. So Shark Tank is a TV show. And I think kind of as a foundation, you got to realize, those guys, they live their lives for 11 months, and then they shoot the entire season in 1 month. So the entire season and they just pack it in. Well, I unfortunately was the first day of filming for season 11, and it's crazy because they're just back. They have been living their lives, and they're not wore out yet, and they just talk a lot, and they're wonderful people, but they would ask questions and I'd start answering. And so you basically, I was filmed for 97 minutes. It wasn't 8 hours, but we were there for the whole, kit and caboodle was a day and a half, but they filmed for 97 minutes and then they edit it down to about 11 minutes is what you end up with. And so a lot of it was cut out. Military did come up. And I had a different approach. My approach was, and I think that's probably one of the reasons I didn't get a deal, was they kept saying, well, who's your target market? And I came to them, I said, well, that's the whole thing. When I watch Shark Tank, I'm always blown away at some entrepreneurs who don't understand who they're talking to. I looked at it and I says, I'm talking to influencers. If you talk to Lori, she's going to get you on QVC. If you talk to Mark Cuban, he can open so many different marketplaces and niches, different funnels. Of which, obviously athletics. By the way, they're all just wonderful people. I mean, you can't say enough good about them. In the same breath, they're probably all a little narcissistic, as they should be, because it's a TV show and they're anywhere from multi-millionaires to billionaires. So God bless them. And I love the show because it creates that entrepreneurial spirit that America needs. I mean, it's the entrepreneurs who, kind of like you mentioned, you come up with this new technology and you say, I'm going to take it. And that's one of the things that they even mentioned. I kept telling them, listen, this is disruptive technology. And the definition of disruptive technology is it sounds too good to be true. When the desktop computer was invented, mainframes were the only thing. And there's no way a desktop could do that. But disruptive technology changes that. And to have something that you can say, listen, you're going to be warm with fewer layers, warm when wet. And oh, by the way, I mean, John, you're wearing our vest. I'm wearing a jacket in our office and I'm not too warm. It's almost like it's self-regulating. And so there again, disruptive technology just sounds too good to be true. And unfortunately with the sharks, they went from being sharks and kind of converted into consumers. And they were like, sounds too good to be true. Even though we did the cryotherapy tank, they saw the videos of the ice jump. Until you experience it, it's that experiential knowledge. Fab, you mentioned it best. When you experience it and you have fewer layers and you're not cold, it changes everything. And for the tactical market, police chiefs and military, it literally is going to change the direction you take in how you do your job.
Yeah, and I love the show too. I actually watch it quite a bit, and I just think they didn't have the ability to really look at really being cold. Like, come on now, these are like you said, multimillionaires,
Yeah.
a billionaire. How often are they hiking up to 12,000 feet or going out in the cold or, So I mean, I think a lot of hunters that probably watch the show, a lot of people who do spend a lot of time out in the cold who watch the show probably went to your website after. You probably got a good uptake of those people
Yeah.
looking at the product.
Yeah.
Because they understood what you were saying on that show, and I'm glad that you've become successful since that episode, and Fortress has continued to go on. As a fan of the show, I always when I watch the show, I look to see what happened to that company after they left the show.
Right.
And it's great to see that Fortress has not only improved. I mean, you guys have added more to your product line. You're out there pushing the product, and people are buying it, and you're getting great reviews. That's just something awesome to see. Even though you didn't get a deal, that the company's actually doing well. And John and I definitely, we love your product. We want to see it out there for more law enforcement, for more first responders, for more hunters, hikers, whatever, man. You're riding ATVs, snowmobiles, you're on a boat in the winter. Wear Fortress gear, and I promise you're going to be more comfortable.
And you know something, Fab, the last time we saw Dale was at the International Association of Chief of Police in San Diego, and he had the really nasty thing of showing new products. He had the hoodie that he came out with, and this Carhartt looking type jacket. He said, "Man, these look coat." And I looked at it, and I unfortunately had to buy both because they were just really cool to look at and actually just to wear. But I mean, that's something else too. Is Dale was there. And also, Dale, where are you heading off to next, or where have you come back from on your journeys? Because I know right now you do a lot to promote your product. I know you attend all these different trade shows and events. I mean, if people are, once they hear this and wherever they are in the country, they want to come see you next and try on your gear, where can they go see you?
Well, so we just returned from the Minnesota Ice Fishing Trade Show, and the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Trade Show. Will be at the SHOT Show. We do a couple of different international sportsmen's expos for that hunting niche. One thing I should mention is we actually do have a woman's line. I mean, they can wear our base layer, which is unisex, but we have a woman's Arctic coat, and it doesn't look like an Arctic coat. When you say Arctic coat, you think a big, fur lined hood, but it does what it needs to do in the cold temperatures. So that's the name for today. But so we do offer products for women. We also have a new camo jacket. We just came out. So the wilderness jacket, you mentioned the work coat, looks like a Carhartt coat. It's just got the Aris inside. So it actually keeps you warm with, it is funny when you talk to people and they call in and they're reordering something and the conversation goes, well, how do you use it? And they're like, that's the crazy thing. Like, I work in a refrigerator freezer and I drive a forklift, and it's minus 30 all day long. And I've got a long sleeve t-shirt and your storm coat or your tundra coat. And I'm like, all day long, minus 30 on a forklift, and you got 2 layers on. And one of the bigger complaints is, yeah, if I get too warm, I actually have to unzip. And you're like, oh, how burdensome. Sorry. So.
It's awesome. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you at the SHOT Show in January, trying on some of your new gear and just seeing you in person again. So thanks a lot for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time.
No, thank you. It's good to see you guys again, and great to be partners.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you, Dale, in 2 months in January.
All right.
Heck yes.
Yeah, so out there, to everyone who's listening to this, when you are doing your Google search, type in Fortress Clothing. You cannot go wrong, I promise you. And if you need any help with that, reach out to us or reach out to Dale, and I promise he will keep you warm. So until then, hope everyone out there who's in uniform, keeping us safe in this country. Stay safe yourselves, and we will talk to you guys all again soon.
Thank you.